What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to your source for fantasy hockey news and degenerate gambling breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We're here for a big time Tuesday edition where we're taking a big time look into what's happening with the Ottawa Senators. It's a special crossover episode with the Locked On Senators podcast hosts. And you know we got big time bets rolling out the door, baby. It's a big time episode. Thank you for joining us.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, and you know what time it is. It's time for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It's a big time Tuesday edition, like I said, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every single day. We appreciate that and wouldn't be anywhere without the support of all our listeners. Today is loaded with news and analysis coming out of the world of the Ottawa Senators. We have the Locked On Senators host joining us today, Steele. I'm excited to talk Sens. We have big time bets coming up at the end of the show. I don't know about you, but Ross, Brandon, it's going to be a good episode with those guys, and I'm excited to talk Sens.
I'm excited too. You know, you and I were big advocates for the Ottawa Senators in the offseason and them being a little bit better this season. And now, Obviously, it hasn't turned out that way. Josh Norris, the big news today with the injury, out for the remainder of the season. We're going to get the Locked On Senators guys on the podcast right now to talk about what's going on with their future, the remainder of the season, and get some insight on the Ottawa Senators. We're here with the Locked On Sens boys, Ross Levitan and Brandon Piller. Thank you guys so much for being here. Obviously, some tough news this morning with the Josh Norris injury, out for the remainder of the season, having shoulder surgery. So definitely some tough news to wake up to. And I know Flip has some questions for you guys, revolving a lot of things, especially Josh Norris. But waking up this morning, what was your guys' initial reaction to, seeing that news that he's out for the remainder of the season?
Well, funny story actually, and I'll lead into Pillsy can give his angle too. But we jumped on the call and we had planned it because DJ Smith, after Saturday's loss, made it clear he's changing the lines. He needs a worker on every line. So we were half expecting to wake up and see Parker Kelly on the first line, Austin Watson playing top six.
Yep.
We needed to wait to record until that came out. So we wake up and another worker, a first-round pick, Ridly Greig, any long-term dynasty fantasy league guys, you got to be happy if you have him on your roster right now because he's getting a top six look with DeBrincat and Giroux right away. But we said, hey, Josh Norris didn't look good on the bench in that third period. He sat on the bench, didn't play the second half of the third. And is this a domino move where Ridly Greig gets up, everyone's looking at him, and then Josh Norris news comes out about 20 minutes later? It was devastating, but my laptop died right away. So I couldn't see. Pillsy just saw me leave. And I come back on, but Pillsy can't see me yet. And he's just shaking his head. He looks so mad. I thought he was mad at me for my computer dying. But then I go on Twitter and I see the news came across. Right, it was that look right there, just the head shake, just like an air of disappointment. So I thought I was the one doing it. I would have preferred. I would have taken that bullet if it meant Josh Norris didn't have to. But sad news, of course, only came back for the 3 games. But this guy's a gamer, man. Like, he scores goals, but he's a two-way guy. He is a huge loss and a huge piece of the Sens.
Hey, what do you think, Pillsy? I know this has obviously been a head-shaking season for you guys in general. Maybe not so much your initial reaction, but you mentioned the gamingness, his two-way ability, and how much does this really mean to the overall success of the Sens is maybe my first question for you.
Josh Norris being out the rest of the season you're referring
to?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting thing, guys, because Josh Norris talked to 5 different doctors when he had his initial shoulder injury. And one of them did mention that he thinks it's okay to rehab and he won't need surgery. Presumably that means the other 4 suggested he went surgery. Josh said, I really trust this guy. I want to play. I don't want to shut my season down. The team ultimately, from my understanding, put it in his hands more than anything. He was able to make that choice. Whether they supported it or what happened behind the scenes, we're not entirely sure. But this was a decision that a lot of effort and research was put into. They decided, all right, let's go with the rehab instead of the surgery. Because if you have the surgery, right away you're shut down for the rest of the season. So he's rehabbing. It's been months. He was injured October 22nd, and he didn't play till just this past week. So quite a lot of time to rehab. They finally felt he was ready, and he comes in for, what, Ross, 3 games? His third game he was done. And you could see it on the bench. He knew he was done. The trainer's talking to DJ Smith, and the real issue is, of course, you don't want to lose Josh Norris, a guy that scored 36 goals in just 66 games last season. He's an absolute stud. He's a sniper. And you mentioned it, Flip. He's also a good two-way guy, one of their best defensive centers.
He scored the only goal of their game.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, he scored the only goal of the game. DJ Smith didn't have him taking face-offs. Giroux wins the face-off. Norris, quick snipe right in. And that's how he scores his goal. And then later on, he's shut down. But the issue is, obviously, you want that guy in your top 6, but what it did is it slotted the Ottawa Senators centers in their perfect spots. Tim Stützle is now undebatably the number 1 guy in Ottawa. He's basically a point-per-game guy. He plays well with Brady Tkachuk, the captain. He just signed the biggest deal in franchise history. Tim Stützle is this team's number 1 center. That put Josh Norris perfectly in the number 2 spot, but more importantly, it places rookie Shane Pinto in the number 3 center role, which is ideal for him because he had to play second-line center for quite a while, and things weren't clicking. And you know what? That's okay. To be a young centerman in the NHL is very difficult. So no one was kind of harping on Pinto, saying it's his fault this team's not getting going, because he wasn't supposed to be thrown in this role. He was supposed to be your third-line center, and that makes Mark Kastelic your fourth-line center, and everything lined up perfectly. But now with Josh Norris out, Shane Pinto's going to have to elevate his game again, but he's going to stay on that third-line center. We're going to see Ridly Greig take over that second line spot, and talk about being put in a position to succeed, guys. You're Ridly Greig. It's your first NHL debut. And who do you get put on a line with? You get put on the second line with Alex DeBrincat, a 2-time 40-goal scorer, and your childhood hero in Claude Giroux on both of your wings. So
good story.
We're obviously excited for Ridly Greig, but the loss of Josh Norris can't be understated, not only for what he does specifically, but how it shapes this team's lineup.
There is a lot of ways we could take this conversation, and that's why we needed to have you two on. And clearly you do know what you're talking about. And if you're feeling it, guys, make sure you go check out the guys at Locked On Sens on YouTube and across all platforms you find your favorite content. Hit them a follow and a subscribe, because you guys know what you're talking about when it comes to this team. And I'm not just saying that because we're having you on the show. It's true. And when you watch you guys day to day, I can feel the pain and the expectations that came with this season as fans and, of course, as guys who cover this team. But when I look at the stats, guys, you know, special teams, pretty good. Goals for, not good. You know, I can't really put my finger on why exactly this team hasn't succeeded to the expectations. Maybe we're a bit too high, but they shouldn't be as poor as they are, in my opinion. And on paper, there's still so much to like in the future and otherwise. So I need to ask you, and maybe start with you, Ross, is where do you put your finger? Who is to blame this season? And I'm not trying to play the blame game because it's boring. Our listeners who need fantasy takes need to know what's going on with this Ottawa Senators team, Josh Norris or otherwise. What's going on with the Sens, man?
Well, there's two big things, and I don't want to leave Pilsy with nothing but breadcrumbs, but the two main reasons, 5-on-5 scoring is atrocious. They have more 5-on-5 goals than exactly one team in the NHL, and that team's the Chicago Blackhawks. They've got 4 less goals at even strength than the Anaheim Ducks. And that's 30, 31, 32 in the league. So when you're at the bottom there, you're already struggling. And I think a big reason for that, Pilsy mentioned Shane Pinto having to move up to the second line center. That left such a hole in the bottom 6. And then Mathieu Joseph is out for 16 games. Tyler Mott still out. That's your entire third line gone for a 20-game sample size when you consider Pinto being off that line in an elevated capacity. Right. So I think that's a huge, huge issue. And the other one is shut the game off after 40 minutes if the Sens are losing. Right. This year, when the Sens are losing after 2 periods, they're 1-19-2. They have points in 3 games. And it's not a stat that you're ever going to be 500 or better in. But, like, You got to win some games when you're trailing after 2. In the DJ Smith era, this is a 255 game sample size. The Senators have 8 wins in 119 games when they're trailing after 2 periods. It's just a complete shut it down. And one of them, fellas, it was 5-1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
There you go. Hey,
I mean, we're talking about a team that just cannot win when they're trailing after 2 periods. And it comes down to the style that DJ plays. Very dump and chase heavy.
True.
And very hard on the forecheck. And not a whole lot of, hey, we're going to possess the puck in the offensive zone. It's a lot of just one and done cycles. And that's a big problem why third periods have been a problem for them this year.
You agree with that, Pilsy, or you got some other takes? For me personally, I think obviously the blue line needs to be addressed a little bit, but what do you think might be going wrong with this team right now?
No, Ross hit the priority is the 5-on-5 even strength goal scoring. It's just been absolutely atrocious.
Especially given all the talent you guys have in that top 6. Yeah. Come on now.
That's the thing. You've got Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle. Both of those guys are basically at a point per game pace. Claude Giroux, you might think he's slowing down. Not at all. He's still producing. Drake Batherson, he's putting up points. Alex DeBrincat, maybe not scoring the goals you thought a guy of his sniping caliber would, but he's still producing as well. Mm-hmm. But you know what? We're a goalie-friendly show. Ross and I tout ourselves as that, but the goaltending simply has not been good enough. Yeah. And we were under the impression that having a guy like Forsberg, a guy that really picked up a lot of the slack for this team last year and was a warrior in net. Mm-hmm. He had over 6 wins when he makes 40-plus saves. So this guy was getting it done. And then you bring in a veteran guy like Cam Talbot. He was an all-star last year. Check Cam Talbot, how he finished the regular season with the Minnesota Wild. I think it was something like 15 wins in his last 18 games or something absolutely insane like that.
He won 15 straight to end off his time.
Yeah, it was wild what he did, no pun intended, when he was playing with the Minnesota Wild there. But the fact they put those goalies together and you're like, okay, we don't have a prototypical number 1 starter and a traditional backup. These guys are going to battle for their nights and we're going to have a 1A, 1B system. Awesome. That sounds great if you're an Ottawa Senators fan. Finally, you get some veteran stability in the crease. That just hasn't been the case. And I think to start the year, they were okay. There's been ups. There's been downs, but as we look at it today, guys, Cam Talbot, 11-13-1 record, 295 goals against, a 903 save percentage. Forsberg, 8-10-2, a 334 goals against, and an 899 save percentage. So neither of these guys is where you want them to be. Pierre Dorion mentioned at the start of the season, they believe for this team to have success, they needed a combined save percentage of .917.
Ooh.
They're not even close. They're barely above a combined 900 save percentage here. So for a team that struggles to score 5-on-5 when your goalies aren't able to bail you out in tough spots, you're going to struggle. And that's what's happening to the Ottawa Senators.
And just quickly on that note too, with Cam Talbot, some of the games he's played has been exceptional. You might remember the one around Christmas where they beat the Boston Bruins. The Bruins had 19 shots in the third period. He was ridiculous in that game. Mm-hmm. And since then, he's rocking an 820 save percentage in 8 games. This sample size is way too big for him to be struggling this much. And it's really tough to see because the talent's there, but there's games where he just doesn't look like he knows where the puck is. He has no rebound control, and it's really tough. 1 win in his last 5 starts and an 870 save percentage in January. It's just when they needed him and he hasn't been there. And when Pilsy mentioned a tandem, that's what we thought too. But Talbot was hurt at the start of the year, had the broken ribs. Forsberg comes in and plays 10 games in a row. Then Talbot comes back, and then they ride him for 10 or 12 games. And it just felt like they weren't really sharing the net, even though the games played might look pretty even.
There is, again, a lot of ways you could break this down. We're going to talk about some fantasy angles with the boys from the Locked On Sens. Coming up after the break, you want their insight on some of these young Senators that may be getting a look in that top 6. We alluded to it at the top of the show. We're going to get to big-time bets at the end of the show, but we got to talk about our new partnership with FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, and we are hyped up and excited for our new betting partner for Locked On because they are the #1 sports book in America That's FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. I don't know what else you need to hear, people. New customers, join today. Get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all of your favorite bets from the money line to the point spreads to the player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a bigger chance at a payout with a same-game parlay. You know that's where Steele and I like to sprinkle that money, so make sure you're tapped into FanDuel for all the latest. And the app is safe and secure and easy to use for everyone out there. Football fans, do not miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 free bets, win or lose at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the NFL.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Also, make sure you go check out the Locked On Sens as well. The boys are doing great things over there. And thank you so much again for being here today and having all the insight with what's going on with this fantasy team. And I know, Brandon, you talked about Claude Giroux a little bit. I do want to talk about Claude Giroux and the future that he has with this team and the impact as well. But I do want to start off with a couple of the young guys and, maybe something that could happen in the near future, a possible trade to address some of the issues. Like I said, maybe something on the blue line to kind of help Thomas Chabot. And just looking at the team itself, they have, the Ottawa Senators have 5 players on entry-level contracts right now. That's going to change, obviously, next year when Tim Stützle is making over $8 million a year. And you've also got 11 players who are 25 years old or younger. So you got a lot of young guys on this team, and rightfully so. They're great hockey talents. But I know earlier on in the season, there was some traction between the Ottawa Senators and the Arizona Coyotes, maybe for a trade with Jakob Chychrun. I know the price for Chychrun was very unrealistic, what they were asking for. But is that something that you think the Ottawa Senators as an organization should maybe revisit and potentially look to trade one of their young guys to acquire somebody on the blue line that can help Thomas Chabot, because he can't do it all himself?
Billsy, is your still answer on Chychrun 2 letters long?
Correct. I mean, if you would have asked, that would be N-O. No, I'm out on Chychrun, just because if you would have asked me when last time we talked, just before the season had started, yeah, maybe that makes sense, because Sens fans, our heads were filled with promise. It was a great offseason.
Yeah.
All Pierre Dorion needed is one defenseman that can play in the top 4 on the right side.
Mackenzie Weegar.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been nice.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't
John
have
Marino
to be Jakob
also.
Chychrun. Maybe it's another defenseman you're looking at. But is that something the Senators should maybe revisit, maybe trading one of these young guys that, yes, they want to keep them, but if that means taking a bigger step on the blue line, because you already have your top 6 group that once they do start going and finding that chemistry, you're going to need some more help on the blue.
Or like you guys said, maybe address the bottom 6. Is there a deal in the future for this team? I think what Steele is really getting at.
Yeah, and the only reason I brought up Mackenzie Weegar's name is that there was talks at the draft right after DeBrincat. Yeah. It's like, is Pierre Dorion going to leave the draft with DeBrincat and Weegar? Yeah. Obviously, Weegar goes in a blockbuster deal. The Sens aren't matching it with their own Kachuk. I promise you that. So you kind of got to leave that where it is. But I'll let Pillsy kind of finish his point there. But I think we just have to qualify every potential move with the Senators is that this team is actively for sale and is likely to be sold soon. How much term and money can you add to a payroll when you're in that financial transition? That's kind of and we talk about that with the coach, the GM, everybody. There is that kind of, not cloud because it's excitement, but there is that one caveat that we have to remember.
Yeah, and I think the big thing with the Chychrun deal that kind of Sens fans got scared off with is the rumor was Shane Pinto had to be involved in that deal. And you guys heard of what I had to say about Shane Pinto. He is the perfect third-line center, and I don't think the Ottawa Senators are interested in doing that. To kind of help you guys out with giving you an idea of where the Sens have been looking is Pierre Dorion. I don't know if he just wants to head to LA in January. It beats Ottawa, and he's just going out there to hang out. But he has been actively following the LA Kings and scouting their games. And
Makes
the
sense
names
to
that
me.
are the names that are rumored there, guys, are Matt Roy, who's got 2 years left at 3.15. He's 27 years old, right-hand shot D. And Sean Walker, 28 years old, 2 years left at 2.65. So those are the types of guys the Ottawa Senators are wanting, because at this point, getting a rental it's just pointless. Like you're
Doesn't make sense.
you're throwing picks away. This team has no chance of making the playoffs. I wish I could tell you guys different. I wish I could spin zone this, but there's no way. So the only deal the Ottawa Senators are going to do are guys that are under 30, over 25, under 30, in that range, some more veteran guys that have term. They're not going to spend assets to get a guy that's just going to say, hey, I don't think things are going to work out for me here in Ottawa, and he's going to walk UFA. That's something they can't be doing.
Yeah.
One thing we're very nervous about, though, guys, those would be kind of minor deals, right? Like those aren't huge names. Neither of those are blockbusters. But Ross mentioned it. The sale of this team is looming over. And at first that was supposed to be a kind of sunny, bright thing.
Exciting.
But now it's almost like a dark cloud a little bit, only because what this does is this turns up the heat on manager Pierre Dorion and head coach DJ Smith all the way up. Because new ownership's going to come in and they're going to say, wait, this general manager and coach have been here for years and they've been one of the worst teams in the league and they keep getting new contracts. We're not going to do that. So we're concerned that Pierre Dorion might be out there trying to make a save my job type of move. And he's going to say, I don't care what happens with this team coming up if I don't have a job here. So I'm going to push all my chips on the table. We're going to go out and we're going to spend assets to get a guy like Seth Jones, who they were rumored to be in. A guy like Matthias Ekholm that they've been linked to. Guys like that, which just does not make sense for where this team is right now. But if you're a general manager and new ownership comes in, you can say, hey, look, I tried to get a top right-hand defenseman. I tried. I'm doing what I can for this team. So that's where it becomes a little tricky, is every single thing that this team does is going to be done with the implications that new owners are coming in, and they're coming in very soon.
What a difference 6 to 8 months make.
Crazy,
not even
guys.
6 months. Let's call it 4 months. When we came on your show at the start of the season, ready to talk top 3 in the division, ready to talk maybe returning the page here. We were ready to put the crown on Dorion. Now we're talking about him saving his job. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you don't produce on the ice. And in my opinion, you have more than enough pieces, even in this Atlantic division, to be in the mix for at least the top, at least in the wild card bubble mix. But hey, guys, I got to get back to the fantasy angles in a sec. Ross, what were you trying to hit me with before I get some fantasy questions off the hip here?
I was just going to say that in terms of what this team's built, and it's almost to your point, Flip, where you're talking about what's the next step. And Jack, our boy Jack, Radio City Jack on Twitter, he's always a great follow. We have a sponsor with Shawarma Palace, the best.
There you go. Shout out to Shawarma Palace.
We walk in, and this guy's listening to our podcast in line. He turns around and says, what the heck are you guys doing here? He had a great point on Twitter, though, yesterday. Said, the Sens have drafted, they had 11 picks in 2020. The 5th, by the way, is Ridly Greig, about to make his NHL debut less than 2 years later. That's pretty solid. However, when you have all these draft picks, at some point, don't you have to package some prospects to move? They can't all play. And now we're seeing Igor Sokolov's about to be an RFA this year. Why are you not giving him a look, or having like a guy like Roby Arventi? Like, they have all these players. Like, at some point, you have to do a quantity for quality trade to take the next step. And it almost feels like Pierre Dorion, with his scouting background, has kind of fallen in love with his own prospects too much. Every team and their fan bases too will always overhype the prospects, right? But at some point, you got to turn them into NHL players. And I think, Flip, that's kind of the other part of this juggling act that Pierre Dorion is doing. Save my job, make the team better, and also have a solid future as well.
That is a very nice segue into my last question for you guys. Thank you again for joining us, and make sure you go out there and check out the Locked On Sens across all platforms you find your favorite content. But it's how you guys sometimes tweet out, again, on Twitter. Very good follow, Locked On Sens. You promo some of these guys that you have your eye on, down in the AHL. What is it, Bennington? Where are they playing these days?
They're in Belleville now, just down
Belleville. There you go. I knew there was something there in a B, but
you're close.
It used to be. It used to be Binghamton. So
there you see, I'm not too far off the mark.
2011 Calder Cup champs.
Hey, there. Get your T-shirt out next episode, please, Ross. You guys do a great job of promoting the young guys, and that's where my head goes. You mentioned Greg. He's going to get a huge option. This is the fantasy show. We need to give our listeners a little bit of a take. Aside from Greg, aside from obviously Pinto and the obvious characters that are in the mix in Ottawa now, Jake Sanderson and what have you, who's one guy, if you were gonna tell our listeners, it might not be this year, maybe it's 10 games at the end of the year, because we know this season might be in the bag already for the Sens. Who are you looking at for maybe that next guy who could make an impact? I'm not saying 40 goals. I'm not saying a top line guy, but just a next guy in the mix in the farm system to make an impact.
Pilsy?
Well, if you're passing it off to me, I'll kind of piggyback on what you're saying there, Ross. And that guy is Igor Sokolov. This guy was a draft pick in 2020. Part of that, a second rounder in 2020. He was part of that massive kind of franchise altering draft that the Sens had in 2020. And he was drafted as an overager. He led the queue in goals scored that year. So he was producing at a big rate, what you want for a guy his age in the juniors. He comes to Belleville. He continues to produce. He's leading the team in points this year. He actually has the franchise record of points as a Belleville, or goals, as a Belleville Senator, very close to reaching that point mark as well. But we talked, we're good friends with him. He's been on the show a bunch of times, and we talked to him a few weeks ago and his coach, Troy Mann. And he was saying that Igor was frustrated watching all these other guys, these kind of veteran fringe guys, get called up, and he's not getting called up. He's producing, but the thing is, he needs to work on his game all around. And as far as fantasy wise goes, this is a guy, when he does kind of figure out the full package of his game and does get called up, he's got a hard shot. He's a big body. He's someone that I think possibly could get a look on the third line playing with Shane Pinto and Mathieu Joseph if and hopefully when he gets called up. And he's someone that we have a lot of faith in. It's just he hasn't been able to get that chance to go up to the NHL. So if I were looking at fantasy options and maybe a guy that could break out and be called up to the NHL, Igor Sokolov is where I would look.
And a great reason too. I'm just going to follow up on Igor quickly as well. 38 points in 39 games this year in the AHL. He's 22 years old. When he was drafted, he was like 240 pounds. He's cut that down to 215.
Wow.
A player comparable that I'd have with him, and not just because they both, well, I guess one's not even Russian, but just has a Russian name. He's a lot like Arthur Kaliev, where it's like you could put him on a power play and he's just going to score from that same spot.
Lots to like about that.
Led the queue in goals. He had 46 goals in 52 games. Not bad. But all kind of just wrist shot, can beat guys. And what I love about him too is his competitiveness. He's basically an adopted East Coaster from living out in Cape Breton. He's in that
good Cape Breton boy.
He's in that group, man. He's out there with Batherson, Marchand, Crosby, and McKinnon in the summer. And you know that's got a little extra kick when he sees these champs come in and what it takes for their work ethic. So
crushing vodka seltzers at the bar all night.
That's it, man. Yeah. Well, Millsy met up with him in Halifax, and he wouldn't even have a beer. He's like, "Let's get a coffee, man. I'm chilling down." So
he's got to crack the NHL, and then he can mix in the seltzers.
There you go. Yeah,
100%. Dude, a lot of their kids are already in the show like that.
Yeah.
That's why.
Maybe that's just it right there. Like that's an answer and something to pay attention to, because obviously we know the Pintos of the world were what you guys were waiting on, and now unfortunately you're dealt this hand that the team is in a bit of flux, and what you were expecting to happen now we're talking trades. Now we're talking Dorion maybe selling off pieces. It's a stressful time for you guys.
Yeah, no doubt. Like I'll give another one, the friends of our show, and it's an easy punchline because of how they reached in the draft. But Tyler Boucher still has plenty of upside in fantasy over the years. He's going to play on an NHL power play. He's going to be a net front presence, and he's going to learn from Brady Tkachuk. So who else better with sense around the net? So I still think he could be a 15, 18 goal guy in the NHL. So he's just got to stay healthy, man. Like he got hurt in that Canada-USA game, still out with a dislocated shoulder. So I'll give him a little love. I'll say Tyler Boucher a little bit further. And then, you know what? We're all Canadians here. We'll give some love to Zach Ostapchuk, a second-round pick from 2021. And he's really elevated his stock. He just got traded to where I'm living right now in Winnipeg. Complete wagon. This team in juniors, 36-5 on the year. They're the number one team in Canada right now. So I think he's a guy who could kind of be that Nick Paul type player where he's going to produce every once in a while, but big body, power forward with soft hands. But I'm with Pilsy though. We admit it. We're as biased as possible. You come on our show. You're good to us. We'll be good to you. Igor Sokolov's our guy.
There you go. Hey, fans in Winnipeg this year hitting the sauce hard for the boys in the, in the minor team. So Steele, hit these boys with one more question, and we got to take it to bills, to bets, to pay these bills.
One real quick final question. This one's for you, Ross, because I know you're a big Claude Giroux fan, and you had some hot takes with him reaching 80 points, getting to 1,000 points by the end of the regular season. I believe he needs 37 more points in the last 36 games of the season. But for me,
Yep.
Claude Giroux's been the highlight so far this season for the Senators. Like I mentioned, you guys have so many young guys and so much talent. And now that he's 35 years old, he's 45 points on this 40 points in 46 games on the season, which is truly amazing. What kind of impact and value does he bring both to the organization to kind of lead these young guys, but also fantasy wise that he's still getting it done at 35 years old?
It's awesome, man. We gave him the best compliment you can give a player in the Ottawa Senators. He reminded me of Daniel Alfredson on the ice. Like a short right winger with an unreal slap shot, just brings his teammates into the battle. And how about those wingers that win faceoffs all the time are so funny to me. Ottawa has two of them because Brady snaps them back on the left side. And then when Giroux's on his strong side at the right, he's third in the league right now in faceoff.
Like 60% of his draws this year. It's impressive stuff.
Yeah.
And he takes a ton of them, man. He's taken a ton of draws. I actually got the number right in front of me here. He's snapping back. He's got 600 faceoffs under his belt at 61% this year.
61%.
And the only thing with fantasy value for him is the Sens have him on the second power play unit right now. But I say that kind of tongue in cheek because when Brady Tkachuk plays all 2 minutes, which he started to do more and more now, you could make the argument that that's actually their top power play unit.
Yes,
it's got DeBrincat, Giroux, Pinto, and Sanderson.
Yeah.
And if Brady's in front of the net, man, and then, you don't have Timmy on there, and that's probably why it is the second unit. But I just think you could get a little more power play value out of him if he was better utilized this season. But all in all, yeah, you're right. 77 points is what he needed going into the year to get to that elusive 1,000-point plateau in his career. He's either going to do it the last game this year or the first game next year. He's going to be right in tight. But the fact he's sitting pretty at 40 points in 46 games, the fact he has 13 multi-point games this year, I got him on my fantasy team and have all season. Always got to get that one token Senator.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it was Giroux because, man, he's also had a few games where he has 7-8 shots on goal. So he brings it, man. That guy's the whole package. And I love that he signed for 3 years because if it was one, I don't know, maybe he'd go ring chasing everywhere, but he's locked in. He's here with his family. And I think he knows that there's some road bumps right now and maybe some changes that have to be made off ice.
Yes.
But I don't see him as being a guy who's requesting a trade this summer. I still think we'll see him back in the same kind of second line role that he played in so well this year.
And say what you will about the plus minus statistic indicative of whatever you want it to be. The man is at -4 this year on a team that has obviously struggled to keep the puck out of their net and at times definitely score goals. The fact that he's there tells me a lot about what he's done and what he's meant to this team overall. Boys, thank you so much for joining us. That's Ross and Brandon of the Locked On Sens podcast. We're going to have them back on all the time. Make sure you check them out across all platforms you find your favorite and hottest content. Boys, good luck the rest of the year. Sincerely, from one Leafs fan to a Senators fan. I genuinely mean that. Thank you again for joining us on today's episode. We appreciate it.
I might have to take a week off of Twitter if Friday night doesn't go the way we need it because I've been a little vocal about Matt Murray and heard some takes back. But I'm all for it, man. I love the banter. Someone here in Winnipeg said, he goes, do you think it's weird covering the Sens when living in Winnipeg? I was like, dude, I used to produce Leafs games. Like, this is nothing. It's like twice a year. This is nothing, fellas. So,
that's it.
No, appreciate you guys. We follow along with you guys as well. And the advice has certainly helped Pilsy in fantasy, not me so much this year. Pilsy's always top 3 in the league, man. He's coming for your guys' jobs. This guy's just a cash cow in fantasy hockey.
So we have you guys on.
No, we appreciate you asking us to join. We'll do it anytime. And keep it up, man, because you're coming into fantasy playoff races and everything.
Yes,
so, hey, you guys are an important tool for many and keep grinding. We appreciate you.
Thanks again to the Locked On Senators boys for hopping on here and giving some insight into what's going on with the Ottawa Senators this season. But we also have to thank our partner, Athletic Greens. Our product of AG1 is literally the best. I started taking AG1 because, again, definitely wanted some more energy throughout the day, and I hate taking the big pills and vitamins in the morning. Absolutely sucks. And I wanted to see what all the hype was about with AG1 and Athletic Greens. So what exactly is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, and probiotics to help you start the day off right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy recovery, your focus, and even your aging. And Athletic Greens was created by the founder when he experienced, again, a ton of gut health problems and issues, and ended up on a very complicated supplement routine to recover from it, which cost him over $100 a day. That's way too expensive, and AG1 is perfectly priced for you. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Again, it's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. I personally like to take it in the morning right when I wake up, and there's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy for you, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on podcast platforms, including YouTube. So hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and all the support. And now let's get down to the end of the episode. Big time bets. We have gone a little long on this episode, Flip. So let's make this quick and easy for everybody out there with the games on Tuesday or Wednesday night. Big time bets. Let's start us off, Flip. What are your 3 picks of the night?
Tuesday night, Steel. It's a juicy board, lots to look at. And, there is a lot of tough games here. That was my takeaway. We're not going to break it down in detail because the detail of the show was focused around this Ottawa Senators situation, Josh Norris and otherwise. Shouts to the Locked On Sens boys. But I got to look at this very quickly, Steel. I'm taking 3 winners. I'm keeping it simple. Winnipeg Jets head into Nashville tonight. We know that this team is – yeah, thank you. Stay with me now. The under has gone 15 games out of the last 20 between these two. I was going to start to lean under, and then I got scared up off of it when I looked up into this Winnipeg numbers. 10-3 over their last 13. 7 wins in their last 9 games against Nashville. That includes 5 wins out of their last 6 trips to Nashville. First pick of the night, Jets on the money line. This feels like a good spot for Winnipeg.
Hello, side bet here. Predators on the money line is my first pick.
Let's put a 10 on it.
Let's put a 10 on it. You've had my number this season with the side bets, but we know the Predators are a second half team. I'm going to take the Predators on the money line plus 100. I think you're getting some good odds.
Good odds.
The trend is not there with the Nashville Predators, but I like them in this spot at home. My second pick of the night, I'm going to take the Sharks on the money line plus 130 against
side
the Detroit
bet
Red
number
Wings.
2, baby.
We got a couple side bets here. I'm taking the Sharks on the money line. Look, the Red Wings have not looked good. They have not been a good team. The Sharks defense is one story, but the offense is there. They're scoring goals, and I like their offense with Timo Meier, even Erik Karlsson, who can jump in on the play. I'm going to take the Sharks on the money line plus 130. But my lock of the night, this one a little spicy as well. I'll take the Ducks on the money line plus 120 against the Arizona Coyotes. We know that a couple of games, maybe once every 2 weeks, the Ducks can kind of take one away from a team, and the Coyotes, again, are another team closer to the bottom of the league. That's my lock of the night. All 3 teams are underdogs, but I like them in these situations.
I almost thought we were going to have 3 side bets on our hands, my friend. My second bet is the Detroit Red Wings, like I said, at home. Let's throw another 10 on the side bet angle here. San Jose only 2 wins in their last 9 on the road. They're a bad road team. Only 2 wins in their last 7 into Detroit, and they have only 1 win in their last 6 games. Look, these are a very tough schedule, and maybe it made sense that we left this betting breakdown short today, Steele, because if I were y'all listening out there, I might ease up off of it tonight, save my couple of bucks for the rest of the week when there's maybe some more advantageous matchups to be sprinkling on, because when I explain my lock of the night, you're going to understand where I'm coming from in terms of tough angles tonight. But Detroit on the money line, minus 144. That's my second pick in addition to the Jets. This also just feels like a night for a little parlay. Add some of these shorter odds or maybe even longer odds and dial the bet back and just make it a little parlay night. Chicago rolls into the Vancouver Canucks situation, Steele, and you might be looking at me going, Flip, why are you even going near this game with a 10-foot pole? And I just think the recent numbers that I've seen between these two teams, Vancouver has the numbers 8 wins in their last 10 games against Chicago. Overall, this team is a mess for sure, but they have good numbers against the Blackhawks. 5-1 in their last 6 games at home against the Blackhawks as well. I just think they're going to be a mess the rest of the season. If they're going to get a big win, it's going to be tonight on the heels. They didn't get one for Brucey when he was cut. They're going to get one tonight for Brucey. Canucks on the money line, laying heavy juice, minus 220 right now. Again, included in a parlay, but honestly, Steele, very, very tough night, but I like the Canucks as my lock of the night on some emotional type level.
That was my initial thought. Don't even come near it with a 10-foot pole here. I'm not even going to make a side bet with you because I'm staying away from this.
2 side bets on tap.
2 side bets for the first time, I believe, on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast your first listen every single day. Again, available Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. So hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. We appreciate all the love and all the support. And thank you so much again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.